Bryt Extra.
Our Bryt TV. The show is Bryt Extra. Me dey the FHR guys. Once you see na obi sending message say yeah, you won't tell show those. I don't say who better na because I don't know to say what be cause so baby. You know we should be talking about it because effect is about the effect. Yeah. So what do you want us to do? What say yeah campaign and I say munja na show, munja na program we entertainment my NG one mun come talk on this NG why I say it no. Munja so for man. But and then conversation no yes switching the crazy because me no be any him say we are se bra ye bre ni ne bra be ba be Michael o ha o ba ha ni na ne so benye japade me boa. Yeah, when you Japanese a one bobra. Na Japade mu nyina na obenya no. Eho processes wo. So person to asase, so person usidan. Eho processes wo ho. Enu tie ne yenya architect, senior man a join me. I be di enkomo e dia fa eye architecture no ho ana say land management, building permit no ho kro ne ba nyina. Ntene no why you wadwe say wo to fie. Why you say who see fie? If you're a phone in a mesremo, and come away, a call at the Mayan so yeah, spanning in ano, and come away, come away. Mr. Fusukwachi is my guest this afternoon. Senior, yes, was it architect of Fusukwachi? A dino sane familiar.
I get that a
lot. Presidency.
Minister
Mr.
Felix Ofosu-Kwakye.
What the panorama? I catch you.
I'm not related to him. Okay. I get that a lot.
Okay.
Yes.
How does that make you feel when you get that?
I just laugh over it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I get that a lot. Any client or any person I meet.
Okay.
Ofosu-Kwakye. I'm like, okay. No.
But I say, I don't say I build the brand. I say,
oh. And also.
Anyway, yeah, can't if you're home sensation, assassin home sensation. But before that, you know, one person would humanity saying architecture and humanity saying.
Okay, so architects and casa, your wide range of services are you provided. Most of the time in Ghana, people know architects say only plants. But your services goes beyond plans. Your two types of services are architects you provide. Your pre-contract services and your post-contract services.
Okay.
You can pre-contract services are services architects may be provided during the design phase.
Okay.
And a post-contract services services are architects may be provided during the construction phase. For the first one, architects no bet nase or no bedding kita. Now like woman what you want to do with specifications. Now we are survey to have an idea and then do a feasibility to tell you okay the opposite is possible and then possible. Now I sketch design. Now I detailed
so
designs.
Like in brief, you know, and to the ordinary Ghanaian, in brief say more or breaking it down to the ordinary Ghanaian who say architect. It's like to the ordinary Ghanaian.
To the ordinary Ghanaian.
Because also terms now
make an endorsement. Okay. To the ordinary Ghanaians, basically, architects, you design buildings.
Okay.
And also, during construction, you provide the service of supervising and also inspecting.
Okay.
In the short term, that is what I can summarize it to, even though there's more to it.
Yeah. What is more to it? Just
like Eliana Mekano, during the construction phase, site inspection, Jumani so say Jumani as compared to and I say as in conformity to design and if any issue BSC was site na architect no ba no contractor na akasa na oma solve it. And most people don't also know this, but before our clients ABTR contract and they say architects need a approval.
Okay.
A check say a jumano according to designer and sana clients need ATR contractor.
Says this with you.
Let me patch and say most people don't know this, but in the corporate world and in the government field, it is done. Before our clients be TR contractor, as I say architect, a bet check a jumano and ensure say it was done accordingly. And sana client need TR contractor and isika.
Okay.
At every stage.
Okay.
Okay.
They say no role when I will play our community to create sustainability or environmental, sustainability in Ghana? What role will play?
Roles, dear, it's quite a number.
Okay.
Okay. So in terms of, I'll start off with feasibility. If we feasibility study, you say you want to put up a building, and now say let's assume say you want to put up a hotel, and then all you have is, let's say, a half plot. We go to the site, survey the land, and then advise you. Yes, survey, it's quite different from land surveyors. Almost surveying is a bit different from
I don't know different.
Because they analyze the site, ni ashwese near the dining basis.
Okay.
But surveyors need the omoko points, not on my boundaries at the search.
Okay. Okay.
Into those are two different.
Surveyor.
Surveyor.
Okay, that's fine.
Surveyor. Yes. Into that is one service, And also, most people also don't know this. Sometimes, also before you even purchase a land, you can engage an architect to advise you and sign a water.
What land? No?
Yes.
Okay.
No bit me advice say, okay, projects are open so to this amount of land and I said to this acres of land, and then you will be able to put up what you want to do.
Okay.
Unfortunately, sometimes people go ahead to do it before, but I mean, it is also not a bad thing.
Right.
But ideal thing is before you purchase it, engage or consult an architect to advise you on it.
Any advice here, because you say a land permit. Maybe say a land permit. So me land permit. Ready near the. So how are they going to obtain that?
So when it comes to land permit, there are documents you'd have to have in order to be able to acquire the permit. Now documents a copy of your indenture. Indenture near what was documents out to show sell an agreement, number of years or the assassin at one and a site plan, a surveyor assign your stamp, and also drawings or architectural plan, electricals, plumbing, and also a document or be here. And lastly, require a search copy, an official search, showing nipa ni din ewa assassin so. Saying na omobe compare if din ewa search no, it tallies with indenture now the buyer no.
Okay.
And these are documents. Once all these documents are ready, what they call assembly now I submit it. Opeto form. I think the form ranges from 60 to 100 CDs. I'm not too certain.
Okay.
Now I fill it. Fill it, then you add it to the documents and you submit it. Until you submit it, you're expected to wait for it to be vetted. Once it's vetted, it goes through the query process, and then there is no issue. After 3 months, issue will permit. That is the process.
Okay. What is the thin line between the land permit and the building permit?
So building permit. So with the building permit, so basically it's let me just make it simple. It's quite the same thing.
And I'm saying there's a thin line.
There's a thin line, yes. It's quite the same thing. We mostly call it land use. Okay. Land use. Okay. No? So with the building permits, it has to do with the building you are submitting to be issued for permits, like building our base, But land permit has to do more of the land use. Okay. There are certain lands that have been zoned for different use. You want to say some lands some areas be dedicated for industries. You can't go and put residents. No, because fumes, the gases that are being released, they're dangerous. Yeah. Same applies to residents. Maybe a resident to me in Castle could see industry until with that one you apply so that it also passes through. Okay. To make sure your land use it conforms to what you want to put up there. Okay. And then they'll issue a permit for that. Okay.
So your processes are about to follow.
And also similar. Okay. And also similar. You need a copy of your site plan. Okay. And then you purchase an application form. And then you would submit it for the permit, and then you also wait till it's vetted.
Okay. So what happens if I don't have one? What happens?
If you don't have what precisely?
The building permit.
They would stop you.
Stop. Anything I also you said do not stop work.
Stop work, produce permits. You see, one thing is, assembly for they are standing in for the country's best interest. They are not looking at you putting buildings in waterlogged areas or let's say places that are not supposed to be mounted.
Okay.
They are looking out, say, whatever you are putting within the community now, it won't pose as hazard to maybe the surrounding neighborhood and the surrounding neighbors. You have to have those documents so that at least you yourself, it would safeguard your finance and as it will safeguard your investment. Because imagine, say, one year permit. Now I go ahead, I could see a dime, baby, I see industries. At the end of the day, you just 1 year permit. You didn't come and seek or find out the use of that place. So they'll break it down.
Okay.
Simply because you didn't pass through the right route.
Okay.
That is why you need to go through the right route and acquire building permits.
Now that permit, how long? Take you
it
for
takes,
you to get?
So it takes 3 months.
Okay.
I know they are trying to make the number no reduce.
Now, so why are you ready within 1 month and this way? But so
that I'm sure they should have a solution, but their standard is 3 months.
Okay.
It's supposed to be, the process is supposed to take 3 months before they issue you the permits.
Okay.
That is it.
But what kind of architects, if I name my ben or advice say yen sit down.
In Ghana, sit down baby. It's just that people want Accra more because that is where most of our industries and our workspaces are. But I would say they are fast-growing areas. I know of the Oyibi Stretch, the Dodowa, the Amasaman, the Ajen Kotoku. I know down East Legon Hills, even though it's quite expensive, there are still developments down there. And then, what's this place? Botiman. Botiman, that's the name of the place here. It's also fast-growing. Yes.
Okay, the honor now be advice say young
so we see Kaswa, yes.
But I don't know architect for no yes mo charge no do. Mo be designer see dino am dino we na mo de $1 and why you guys charging in dollars and all of that?
No, we are not the ones who sell the land. Okay.
Make a building.
We are not the ones who sell the buildings.
Okay.
So we actually are responsible.
No, so there's
not entirely. I won't say the design service is going to be so much that the person can't even build.
Okay.
Most of the time, there are factors and for consider before they price their buildings. Nipa no or ton dino. Not necessarily an architect. It be our contractor and architect for his service and our provided design. Now, what he would do is he would calculate the cost of the land. He will calculate the cost of the building. He will calculate the cost of his finishes, and then also the profit at also.
Okay.
Indeed, that is what influences the price. Unfortunately, our regulatory system is supposed to regulate the pricing systems in the country, and shut down and get enforced, sir. So people are still quoting in dollars, even though it is not legal.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And yet the fault of an architect, mostly because there is no proper regulation. Emma Ngofono and stick it to cities, no.
Okay. But Monkas, are you expensive?
Expensive is relative. Expensive is relative.
Is it expensive?
It's not expensive. If you're looking at good and quality work, it's not expensive.
Okay.
Compared to the price of what you're putting out, it's not expensive. It's just a peanut percentage. Yeah.
It's what areas I would be able to me sit down, but what architect I would designing. What is one designer you tell people to opt for? So Musio Mudaya say there's a trendy one be a course why you advise anyone why you're ready so
So one thing is I don't impose things on my clients or I don't impose things. You are supposed to let the clients feel free.
But
because
in the world of, trendy, designs,
sometimes clients don't know about or one specifications.
Okay.
On one taste, and
Okay.
that's something I will say Pinterest. And then or the Bema, and then he tells you, I want it like this, and I say, I've seen this, and then I want you to modify this. Inti earlier no make I say, yeah, you call it assassin survey. Sometimes you call assassin survey na yenya specification from clients. I to me advice and say, even though open the say, it won't be the best because the road access is here, and I say in Framana able free her. Until let's orient it this way. But I see that in Ghana at the moment, the people are more into the contemporary style, the more minimalistic style. It's relative, depending on what you want.
What if I don't have? Mabao, I don't have. So advisement or advise him on the designs. You want to switch, but I won't allow you to switch.
I'll show you a sample, and then you would choose.
Sample where? Yeah.
No, I mean, I'll show you samples of different. So we have the normal,
what's the
traditional.
Maybe almost see not roof no ekata. So they say no, you won't see the roof and all of that. It's not maybe say you say no. What is trending in terms of designing a house?
In terms of designing, currently what is trending is the minimalist style. The in quotes, almost kind of hidden roof, but roof, no. But the technical thing is parapet roof.
And there's a perception that I know you're safe.
It boils down to two things: workmanship and then design detailing. These two things, most of the time, if it's not properly looked at, it doesn't make the flat roof and as a parapet roofing design not safe, because there are certain ways that we approach it when they are constructing it, like creating drains within it. If you drains and like I don't know how to put this, but they don't create drains within the roof to carry the water. Into a retaining also. Into it finds its way down into the building. It's all once again, it all boils down to the workmanship and then the level of detailing, design detailing. Yes.
Okay. Now, in terms of say you who said stop work, the land permit and the building permit, how what role now more architects for more play to ensure that there's compliance to these regulations in Ghana?
Yeah. So with that, once the design is done, I advise a client, so on the site plan and there are localities and as locations of where assembly, every area has an assembly within its jurisdiction. Into I advise clients, based on the site location, Rebecca say submit this and this and this document. Sometimes we submit it on behalf of the client, and now say the client will decide to submit it themselves, and then we take them through the whole process. You advise you, but the actual thing really happens at the assembly, where you'd have an in-person to also assist them throughout the process. But in terms of getting the right documentation to submit for permits, that is where we come in to assist them.
Do you face any challenge in doing that, the processes?
Sometimes it's, I won't say it's a challenge, because as of now, I know the things involved, the most architects do. But sometimes, so the requirements, they be always a sakaka sometimes, depending on what you are putting up. So let me just give an example. Someone putting up a 3, 4, 5 structure on a story building. The requirement might be different. In fact, the requirement will be different from Mobia OC infant flat and as a bungalow and as a ground on the first floor. So when it comes to that now, specifications and our requirements, it misses it misses in a way. Those are, let me just say, the slight, I won't even say challenge, but those are the slight challenges that usually occur. You have to go back and then get some of these documentations ready. But if you also, once again, happen to have a good architect, and also will be a bad advice, so all the documents right, and sana submit it. Yeah.
Until for first-time builders, and as a landowners, are there some mistakes normally they do when they are trying to build their dream house?
A lot. a lot. I can list 1,000, but I'll just keep it short.
Okay.
So number one obviously has to do with engaging the right professional. Okay, like just the same way in case you're going to purchase a land, I'll be your search. And that is the same way I also have to do a background search on who you're handing your job to. Most of the people are not who they say they are. So you always have to find out maybe works they've done. Also, for instance, architects, if you want to know an architect, a qualified architect and a qualified engineer, we have websites. We have the Ghana Institute of Architects.
Okay.
You can check who published architects.
Okay.
We have the Architects Registration Council as well. The list of architects now. We call engineering side, that's why we have GHIE, Ghana Institute of Engineering. Almost publish it. Engineers, qualified. Until you have to do your background check. Okay. Most people don't do that. And then there are issues with their buildings. And then secondly, too, I know Ghanaians are going to like this, but it has to do with more of
why is it difficult?
Okay, no. So it's more of cheap labor and materials. Okay, most Ghanaians like to. Because ideally, designer, maximum specifications.
Right.
Your catcher will say, use it 16 mm, use it this, use it that.
Material,
quality, exactly. And then you end up having different materials and as a lower quality material being used. And then there are issues on site.
Right, that's what them our Bryt TV and ye didn't come out area fat sena ye bebo ye dream adi ho wo ye dan see asase ownership in United no architect ofusu kwache are joining me that's why AD community and to also with the mistakes and also say no Ghana phone binom epadia F4 then basa na eha ejuma no
okay. And then number three documentation. You see before obeto asase no so nya right document. In fact, auto asase so nya right document. And na be submitted drawings so for permit so nya right document no. And also some people tend not to have those proper documentation no in terms of land wise. Okay. They say at least over to us and they say, oh yeah, we'll search and find it out, or if it's, I mean, you're buying it from the right source. Some people don't end up doing that and no musika kim. And a bad design aspects and the permit aspects in as well. They also don't get the right drawings to submit. I know yes, some of the mistakes. Right. And the last one I would contribute it to, people don't cost their buildings before they start construction. Before I start here, you have to know how much your building is going to cost you. And then that is where we come on board with a quantity surveyor. Say, costing of how much your project is cost. You find say, foundation, and here cost. Ground floor, first floor, second floor to your roof. Obey all those breakdown, no present here so that at least to be able to start the project.
The price then now.
The price then now. Into your no for now, budget be a 1,000 cedis, but calculatively,
we 5,000.
5,000 exactly. So I always advise get a professional to do the quantities. Say now. You won't be surprised in the course of the construction.
Okay. Okay. Now, I think the fourth point or third point, say mistakes I ain't who they say as I see maybe issues also I can't go find in terms of land litigation it's calm no. Everybody who say as I see way and I say few way I'm going enye.
There are various ways you can do your search, but the official one, official search, a lands commission. Search there two types. You window search and you official search. The best thing is to go for the. So let me make it simple. Your window search. Maybe so. In America, the perk. Your window search and then we have the official search. Okay. Official search is the best one to go in for because it show the history behind the land. Why in the first. who transferred it to who, and then who is owning it now. No, I had to say printed out and then endorsed, showing the history and the background. Inti ubashe name na what official search so, and then compare it to whoever is selling it to you.
Okay.
That is one way of doing the search. Now, number two is the local way. You can go one day to the site and then ask the neighboring people or the neighborhood. Say, as I see, are there issues on the land? And now say, say, okay, as I see, the person who said Mansumbi was one. The people, you see, those are the best people to even most of the time ask because they have the source.
Yeah, the local,
if there's the locals are the people who have the actual source because they can tell you, say, oh, Endra Krobi Baso.
Right.
Endre Chin Tokwabisi.
Right.
Of course, Land Commission might not be able to give you that, even though that is the official thing to do. So these are ways you can also do that. And also, lastly, you can also find out from the chiefs. And then, I mean, get to know if everything, all these three things are tallying. Once they tally, you can then officially purchase it.
Okay, I see. So what if you go through all these stages and at the end of the day, who say, as I said, no, there's a problem.
That is why you also have to involve a lawyer at an early stage.
Okay.
You also have to. Ghanaians, most of the time, no, we don't involve lawyers. It is kind of quiet.
Lawyers and who? Because I mean, I die if you go from so we should engage lawyers, pay.
For now, I would say lawyers.
Okay.
When you are purchasing something or you're entering into agreements, the best person to involve at an early stage is a lawyer.
Okay.
No? Probably the other people can come in at a later part.
People?
For now, I'll just say lawyers.
Okay.
Yes. Because a bare contractual agreement, this is KMOB. You need proof. So there has to be a drafted there has to be a draft to show say there's been an exchange of finances. Saying that if anything backfires, there is a legal document showing say so and so this amount of money. There's also the court part where you can also go and do the signing at the court. Say, I'm giving this amount of money to this person. And then, if in case anything happens, the person is supposed to refund me plus extra penalty.
Okay.
Because it's wasting my time.
Okay.
I would have gained much. Into all these, there are other measures most Ghanaians are not aware.
And I say, Koto Assassin, so now say, Nipakona would you want to honor Wawaria and also another different ball game altogether. Wawaria. They say, our spouse. You have a spouse. Now say I have to, go beyond say to know say be as I saw their mat say later we baby Samuel assassin so they are saying that so koto assassin say nipakona woji wono hono or yere ne ma you have to go the extra mile to do investigation. How
exactly.
do that?
It is true. You have to do a thorough investigation, especially if it involves a lot of money.
Okay.
It involves a lot of money, just so that you don't go through the headache. That is where the lawyer comes in. So that
don't drafted. Lawyer and swear.
Who invested so much money? Let's say $1 million CDs, and then you can't pay a lawyer.
You don't have Ghanaians.
Oh no, but
you know them.
So imagine, let's assume, say you're giving a lawyer, let's say maximum 5,000 or 10,000.
Okay.
And then you are purchasing a land, say 100,000 cities. How much do you have to lose? Just compare it. You have to look at a long-term goal.
Okay.
You see, because anything can happen, and then they would come in handy. You see, all these things, sometimes if you try to cut down costs, now it will end up finding a way to you. And when it finds its way to you, the amount of money you end up involving, believe you me, you wouldn't like it. So that's always that's why it's always good to involve them at an early stage.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Right. And so to say, and Chebia ne who said them bubu Ekoso Ghana around their site. There's one trending video who said boy be a patrol.
I think it's McDonald's or something like that.
And so in this contest, what went wrong? Looking at the guy, around their site and are we supposed to build there? What is going on now?
Okay, so Yakasa Ramza site, basically, we are referring to wetlands, our government and demarcated or may demarcated to prevent flooding or to control flooding within a community. Into the end, say if in case a floods, it is supposed to redirect to the Ramsar site.
Okay.
Aha. Into that place, no, is not meant for human habitation because Ramsar site in Shonu Koguswa, it absorbs it into the ground, and then it go through ground. It's redirects into the lagoons, the nearby lagoons, and the lakes.
Right.
It's only for human habitation. It's supposed to boost like the ecosystem. Aha, and then like act as a natural habitation for migratory birds and then different types of species, and also promote even the aquatic life, no? The fishes. No? Into those places are not meant to be stayed.
And I who build this a good way.
Good.
What went wrong?
Once again, no, I would say, according to, based on the news, now, according to them, no issues, no permits were issued.
Okay.
No permits were issued. And then they were also given a heads up. I won't say they didn't do their search. Probably they did their search. But I would say that maybe when they were putting it up, it wasn't properly, the people who were supposed to enforce it really didn't enforce it at an early stage.
Okay.
So I would say that that is the downside of it.
Okay. Apart from Ramsar sites, also there were other ensure we see floods. Ghana, me wa cry. I mean, for crying exactly who floods pa. Your book said the position of our buildings now. What Ghana has seen. I don't know. It may cause a flood. Is there another factor to in contributing to floods? Are you who Ghana ha?
There's a lot. There's a lot. When it comes to flooding, there are a lot of factors, but I'm going to pinpoint on 3 major causes. So number one, people building in waterways. So the waterways, they are supposed to serve as channels in Shobe Film in case of floods. But because people have built within these waterways, when it rains, it doesn't have any channel to pass through. Into what happens is it begins to rise. It rises and not flooding. Into it rises to a point where it enters into people's premises because it needs a channel to pass through. And that is where the flooding occurs. Number 2, I'll attribute it to the fact that most of our drain systems are choked. Are choked with litters, which, of course, the citizens play a massive role in that. And the same thing also applies when it rains because all those drainage systems that are supposed to carry the water is choked. It also begins to rise. It rises and enough flooding. I started penetrating and starts going through people's rooms and then houses. And then lastly, I would say that the engineers involved or the architects also involved. Let's say we have a major role to play in this because, for instance, when we are building in new developments or new areas where there are no drainage systems, Yanka says, coming up with design solutions a bit cater for in case there's water or in case you use wastewater from your house. You can say water from the sink and then the bathroom. You are supposed to come up with a suka waste and now say designs be a bit me a cater for those waste, and sometimes they don't, and then it begins to pile up and then add up to the community waste, and then the flooding also occurs. These are some contributing factors, and I always say this issue, if it's going to be solved, that it is going to be a collective responsibility.
But would you agree that major cause of floods, your building structures, baby,
yes. Those
what
are the
needs
main
to be
reasons.
done? Because they be a come once them, but at the end of the day, the mention to say right.
Until the drainage systems are being cleared, and now until you break it down any illegally mounted structures in waterways, I don't know how this solution is going to be solved. Indeed, the best solution as at now is any building within any illegally mounted structure in any waterway has to be broken down. And then I know these guys are doing amazingly well. Bastard Boys,
Yeah.
I can see they're doing very well, even though it is still, Ghanaians are still being Ghanaians sometimes. If that agenda is pushed massively, like they are getting a bigger hand on deck, I'm thinking that can also help to ease out on the flooding issues in Ghana.
Okay. I know a structure be a me who are a waterlogged area, but person why in a way what build their costra in Shoni bar and funnel, even in waterlogged areas. Is it advisable to do that? Me are many again. So say a honor flood, but not an idea.
It still doesn't solve the issue.
Okay.
It still doesn't solve the issue. As far as water is still being retained, you still have it, so you can be there and then there's still water out there.
Because people are thought that. You know, what realize say it's a waterlogged area.
Exactly. Until with these ones, the community has to come together. Now, be a proposal for where water can be drained. Like you would have to come up with drainage systems. Obviously, your community will have to come together and then engage the service of an engineer or an architect. Normally, designing systems. And I said, if being the case, you have to involve the government to come up with structural systems. I bet to me, I redirecting issue, adjoining main storm drains. But until then, if there's someone say issue etaha na usisi what is happening in issue netaha a peja a basro into and solve any issue.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now, last question I've been remember here. Also, your hono ma to me say building be eduregu. I don't know then edeba. What causes collapses in buildings and all of that?
And also boiled out to like 3 major points. Poor workmanship, a 1 point. Cheap materials and labor, a another point. And then poor design and detailing. Let me explain it. With workmanship, poor workmanship, the truth is, most of our local artisans, they are unable to read drawings. They are unable to interpret drawings. Into Ube design A, no because it's not B in C. Ube design C, because it's not D in C. Into if there isn't any proper supervision, it causes the buildings to fail. Because any specifications now, already see. Number 2, has to do with cheap materials and cheap labor as well. Because when it comes to previous discussion I'm
right.
The architect is supposed to be part of the process, construction process. But because sometimes clients pay some saving cost into your free architect and engineers, and then they go ahead to do things just to cut down cost. And then the building also ends up failing.
Okay.
And now lastly, poor design details. Sometimes you can have good workmen, but if the design wasn't handed over to a qualified architect or engineer, sometimes the building can also fail.
Okay.
Into the nitty-gritties of all these factors, and they cause that.
My fact way in chipping in one said several years Malcolm issue no eba man go for be from so if you're in a building, I say building way it looks like a bit to me a crack down who was some you be able to media who said building way and when you able to me a
So with the Malcolm building, before I answer your question, the building wasn't meant to carry extra loads as it was supposed to, as it was looking. I learned that it was supposed to be 2 levels, according to the reports in the news, but I think it was made 3 levels. The pending load from the top, the ground wasn't designed to hold it.
Right.
That caused that. And secondly, too, they were notified earlier, said there were cracks and there were issues. But they turned a blind eye. Imagine those things were addressed earlier. There are certain ways they can be addressed, which I'll pinpoint out. But imagine those things were earlier addressed and then extra columns were introduced and extra pillars were introduced. It could have helped. Now, in terms of cases where you observe issues like that, you have to involve a structural engineer.
You should look out for cracks on buildings or what?
Not all cracks are issue cracks.
Okay.
Some cracks happen because building is settled, and it is normal. But there are some cracks here. They are problematic cracks. That is where the structural engineer, in quotes, civil engineer comes, and then about the assessment. Almost machines beyond the assessment. It's more like a pressure machine. Almost the Bayer assessment, and then they will advise you. Say, okay, this place, that place needs to be enforced.
Right.
These are some of the things that needs to be done.
Okay.
So the long and short of it is just engage a professional.
Architect. Right.
An architect or a new professional.
We're the architect of Sukwachi, right? Wabing. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
So Wabing. I'm not doing to so Wabing.
Mabing. Mabing also.
Obi pet. They say officer Obuano, you know, land permit and building permit processes, to advise and maybe also sit down here if I be home.
So I mean, I'm on social media.
Okay.
You can go into my social media, Instagram, Architect Ofosukwache.
Okay.
Facebook, Architect Ofosukwache.
Okay.
Instagram, TikTok, Architect Ofosukwache.
Okay.
I mean, every Architect Ofosukwache.
Okay.
And then on YouTube is SV, you leave a space, Architecture. SV, Architecture.
Okay.
Yes. So
that business number.
when they get in touch with me over there, I would.
Oh, it's your own for business number. And then there's some.
Oh, I mean,
and I go for friend now. A rough.
There's a lot, yes.
I know say there. Okay, one funny
Oh, I mean, you see, it's when. I don't know. But the whole point is, if someone is serious about engaging you, they would email you or.
Hey, no, Obi only email at the address. I can tell you I'm
Okay. Okay, so you let me just give my number.
Right.
Okay, 024 988 5897.
So this is you.
024
024
988 5897. Yes.
That is all by way.
You're welcome.
It was any architect of Sukwache. Any dim commoting Michelle. So now city and no. Opobi no abwa with your building and then home chrono benny now call me Facebook and social media platforms so I'll be architect Ofusu Kwachi. I hope another day also have a banner in doing come up from.
Sure.
All right. It was saying try some this is Bryt TV. I'm sure no air Bryt extra. Try one bus see the rest of the conversation on your atlas about this year.